Welcome back to our channel. Today, we delve into a crucial moment in the history of Southern Africa, the attack on Cassinga in May 1978. This military operation sparked outrage and profoundly impacted the region. It was both a tactical success and a political disaster for the South Africans. By the late 1970s, the political landscape of Southern Africa was rapidly changing after Angola gained its independence. SWAPO, the Southwest Africa People's Organization, had established dozens of bases in that country from which numerous incursions into Namibia were prepared and launched. Feeling increasingly threatened, South Africa decided to retaliate. One of the targets identified by the South Africans was the Cassinga camp, located more than 200 kilometers from the Namibian border. This camp was crucial for SWAPO's operations, serving as a coordination center and transit point for guerrilla fighters. Cassinga also housed thousands of Namibian civilians who had fled the war in their country, including women and children. The closest military unit to Cassinga was a Cuban battalion stationed 15 kilometers away in Chimutate. Due to the distance to Cassinga, the South Africans decided to attack the camp with a force of 257 paratroopers who would be evacuated by helicopter after completing their mission. The South African Air Force would play a significant role in the operation, with fighter jets set to bomb the camp and protect the paratroopers until their evacuation. The operation was meticulously planned, with the element of surprise being crucial to its success. At 8 a.m. on May 4, 1978, the attack began. South African bombers unleashed devastating airstrikes on Cassinga, taking advantage of a morning parade where hundreds of people had gathered. The bombings caused heavy casualties and paralyzed the camp's defenses. Despite some of the paratroopers landing accidentally over a mile away, they quickly engaged in combat. After approximately 2 hours of resistance, the paratroopers managed to destroy the camp and prepared for evacuation by helicopter. By noon, the South Africans learned that Cuban troops had begun advancing toward Cassinga. As the column moved, South African aircraft started to circle the area and soon began attacking with rockets and machine guns. A critical moment occurred when a Cuban T-55 tank was hit and exploded. This was just the beginning of a series of attacks that directly impacted the Cuban column. An armored vehicle, a BTR-60, received a direct hit that penetrated its armor, killing the crew chief and injuring the other occupants. The situation became desperate when another BTR-60 joined the list of destroyed vehicles. Despite the chaos, there were notable acts of bravery. One soldier jumped from his burning BTR and managed to dismantle a jammed 14.5mm anti-aircraft machine gun, mounting it on another vehicle to open fire against the South African aircraft. This action was crucial, as panic was contained and the Cubans began to deploy along the embankment, maintaining a combat formation. However, the airstrikes were only one of the problems for the column advancing toward Cassinga, as South African forces had ample time to mine the road and establish points of resistance from which they ambushed the Cubans. The column's advance was slow and dangerous. Most of the soldiers in the Cuban Second Company had sustained injuries, and several had lost their lives. Despite the dangers, the Cubans continued their advance and, after suffering 16 dead and numerous wounded, the Cuban column reached Cassinga, where they found over 600 Namibians dead, mostly civilians. Although the South African army suffered only 3 dead, 11 wounded, and 1 missing during the attack, the operation became a political setback for their government. In the days following the attack, SWAPO invited journalists to document the aftermath, revealing mass graves filled with victims of the assault. Critics of the South African government condemned the operation, describing it as a brutal assault on unarmed civilians. Today, the attack on Cassinga remains a controversial topic. Supporters of the former South African Army argue that it was a necessary military action, while opponents label it a war crime. This event left scars that would last for decades. If you found this video about the Cassinga attack interesting, please like and subscribe to learn more stories about the Angola War.